All right, we're back for another week of the AllStar MMA live show. Of course, I have Jay Speck, the host, with me, and then we have our third wheel, our special guest, Dylan, the Sex God. You forgot that nickname, right? The Sex God, right? It's
Breaking it
definitely
out
back.
again, yeah.
Exactly, the Sex God is back. Yeah. So with the show, we're gonna recap what happened over the weekend at UFC Vegas 83. Make sure you guys go in the descriptions, download the All Star app, make some picks on UFC fights, accumulate points, and win prizes. Join some leagues. There's some leagues going on right now. They're all completely free. The app is completely free. J Spec's got a league. He's probably got the best league. I'm not being biased because I'm not even in the league. But if you go play his league, you can win a prize, some memorabilia that is worth some pretty pennies, man, out there. J Spec, what's going on this week? What do you got?
Well, well, as tradition, as we've done all year for quite a while now, pay-per-view event. So we'll be doing our live Twitter space and best picker via the All Star Sports app, highest XP points will win autographed Ensign Illinois gloves. You guys seen it posted on my timeline. Maybe you haven't, but now's your time. Got to meet up with him this past month, signed some gloves for you guys, and I'm giving it away. So basically, jump on this free app that has no ads. We ask you to play, just boom, 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 make your picks. Come hang out. Best picker in the space is gonna win an awesome, awesome glove.
Yeah, Ensign Inoue. If you don't know that name, just go back on Fight Pass and watch some of his fights from the early days. He's a pioneer, right? He's like he was one of the first ones. He was probably the first one where he was like Japanese but Americanized Japanese,
Yep,
and then he could balance both sides, right? He knows the Japanese side, but he also knows the Western side,
American, yeah, the American
and
way.
took advantage of it. Yeah, he understands what's going on.
Hey man, anybody who can get a win against Randy Couture, you gotta respect, right?
Yeah. It's so crazy, and he was a professional racquetball player as well. His brother was like
His
Oh,
one of the
brother,
best in the one of the best in the
yeah,
world. Pretty wild, right?
two-time world
Um,
champion.
yeah,
That's so weird. Like two weird things to be good at: jujitsu and racquetball.
racquetball. Yeah, you don't see those combinations out there too. You're not like going on a triathlon where it's like one is you got jujitsu some people, and then the next step would be to play racquetball against some killers. That would never happen. Anyways, yeah. So go in the league, get yourself yeah, if you're good at picks, if you're everybody always talks shit like, oh, like this dude's gonna win. I know this dude. Everybody's talking shit when they watch fights, right? Put put your money where your mouth is,
With
but
no
not really
money.
money. Yeah, there's no money. You just win. If you win, if you're good at it, you win. So go in the descriptions, download the All Star app. That's enough of us paying the bill, so to say. Let's jump into UFC Vegas 83. It was supposed to be UFC Shanghai. From my sources, from what I was told, was the reason why they did not have this event in Shanghai is because of issues,
Ugh.
governmental issues, right? So I don't know the details of it, but to me, it's funny that they would announce the card in Shanghai before they even got the clearance to have the show in Shanghai. That just blows my mind why they would do that. Maybe it's a lie. Maybe it's a an excuse because they didn't have the card that they wanted to put on. The original card that they wanted, the fights that they wanted. Maybe I don't know, but we got the card. They moved it to Vegas. Most of the fighters were able to get a visa real quick and then get into the U.S. to compete. So let's talk about the main event first. Bantamweight division, two contenders. You got Chris Gutierrez, the kicking machine. Basically, that's what he is, right? He's a kicking machine. Like he is there, and you know what he wants to do. He wants to chop your legs up, and basically that's where it starts from, right? That's his base. That's his foundation. Chop the legs up. Song Yadong, he went in there. He had a decent game plan. He was hitting his own kicks as well, and used his wrestling, used the all around skill set, and got the win, man. Got the decision win. I think this experience for Song Yadong being so young is good, man. It shows his development. It shows uh his progression. His leveling up as a fighter because he didn't go and chase after the knockout for the whole fight. He actually used his wrestling, his grappling. and he knew where to win the fight, right? Because if he kept it standing, how many Dylan, how many leg kicks can you take? You know, because there's some guys that could take a bunch, and there are certain guys take three leg kicks and they're done, man. What'd you think about the performance?
Yeah, I mean, there is like a certain level of fight IQ one has to showcase when you're fighting someone like Gutierrez, as you outlined well. And I think, Yadong very much showed that, like, definitely a comprehensive sort of performance, and definitely, like, just gives him, I guess, that mileage going forward. And as far as like what you could see him getting up to as a next test, and with him calling out Piotr Jan, I mean, I feel like that makes a great deal of sense as like a logical next kind of step up.
Doesn't he know Piotr Jan's fighting Peter McGregor next?
Good.
Didn't he see that? Didn't he see that? Like, doesn't he
Isn't he on
follow the
Twitter?
news?
Going
Yeah,
X,
isn't he?
brother.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I guess if you call it Twitter still, then it's not real. You gotta
Yeah,
go
yeah,
on the
right.
X. Yeah, I don't understand why you would change the name, but that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. So with Song Yadong calling out Piotr Jan. Before we get into that though, um, and what he thinks about his future, because he really wants to fight Piotr Jan because he sees something in that. He's a former champion. He likes to match up because the thing about him is they're kind of similar fighters in some ways. J Spec, do you see that? Like him and Piotr Jan?
In the sense of they're super patient, or this
Yeah.
version of Song, this mature 20, what brother's 26, right? Like he's
Mm.
still like he's physically primed, but that's awesome. He's already getting that veteran mindset, knowing how to pace himself in there. Yeah. Man, going to that. Yeah, there is similarities in I think in that regard where they're pretty cerebral. But there's two huge differences, right? Song is young and trending upwards, and Piotr, with all respect, like he's been fighting the top of the food chain, and that's no disrespect, man. You're fighting the best of the best, and the reality is you're coming up just this short. You're not getting blown out, so you're slightly trending downwards. Young dudes going upwards looks good to me. Perfect stuff. This is what it's all about, really. But I just want to touch on the Gutierrez kicks thing via the AllStar Sports app. You can see 76 leg kicks landed by Gutierrez. Now, not all of those were, fastballs, if you will, but 76. I mean, Song's got thick calves, but geez, like that's just crazy. I just had to bring that up. Amazing performance by Song. That he's tough, bro. Like that's what can you say about that? That's toughness. That's just not easily accessible in the era now that we're in, where you're gonna get kicked in the legs, dude. Like you're gonna get kicked in the legs at least. What in a modern MMA fight? What's the average? Like somebody out there, find me the super awesome stats that people have. Like there's got to be like what? I'm gonna guess 15. Like I think 15 is probably the average amount of kicks you eat in a fight. That's 70. Anyways, great job overall. What can you say? It was not like a barn burner of a fight, but you win, right? And that's where I think some fans get a little crazy. I know I wasn't like the most enthused during our watch party. Okay, keeping it real, but at the same time, these are ranked fighters, dudes. Like everybody talks about the rankings and how important or non important they are, but at the end of the day, there's no chumps 1 through 15, none. All of them are killers, and so sometimes you just got to win, and you just win, and it's not something you're gonna go blow up the internet with. You don't have, all the thunder got taken by the co-main event. I guess there you go. That's my closing statement on that.
Yeah, the thing is, some fighters, right, they get caught up in what they believe the fans want to see, right? And they don't use the other skill sets that they have during a fight. That's the biggest problem right now, right? Is these fighters at the highest level are going in there most likely fully prepared, right? Like they've done everything during camp, wrestling, jujitsu, all of that stuff, and then want to just strike against a striker because they want to prove something. Let me give you an example of Adrian Yanez versus Jonathan Martinez. Jonathan Martinez, teammate of Gutierrez, very similar style, right? But different, you know what I mean? But they love to attack the legs. Yanez did not attempt any kind of wrestling at all in that fight, right? Because it's almost like because Giannis can grapple, he could scramble, he knows how to do that stuff, but it's almost like he's caught up in this stigma that he's this, of course he's a phenomenal striker, but I'm saying like sometimes the strike is not going to work on certain nights, right? So you have to be able to go to the wrestling, go to the clinch, go to the grappling. You know what I mean? If you're all around mixed martial artist, and you don't see that in fighting. You just nowadays that's kind of thrown out the pocket. But Song Yadong, he's not stupid. He knows the win streak's important. He knows that this opponent is strong here, so I got to take him to this place and neutralize it, right? Another thing that I wanted to ask you guys about is what about Gutierrez complaining throughout the whole fight? Like, what is he doing on his back, complaining to the ref? You know what I mean? What about when he grabbed his glove, like had his fingers inside of his glove, and then why is Herb Dean giving hard warnings? Like, what is a hard warning? Is it like a hard lemon iced tea or something? Like, what does that even mean, Dylan? Hard warning.
Yeah, I mean,
I give you a hard warning, man.
Well, I feel like, man, like refs will like admonish fighters to a certain degree, but it's too many warnings. I mean, they never end up deducting the point, it seems like. It's just they try to dissuade them from doing it, but I don't know. They're just allowed to continue to get away with it. I mean, if you're going to deduct a point from someone for doing something categorically illegal, it's like just do it from the rip, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly, right? Do it from the rip, do it from the start, and everybody should be following the same kind of protocol in each event, right? The referees should have like a meeting themselves and say like, this event, this is how we're approaching it. Well, it should be every event, right? But then there's different rules in different areas of the country, that they go by, and the judging criteria is different in certain areas as well, which makes it all confusing. Like, why is there not just one commission for the whole country? But then it goes back to America, which they're all divided. You know how it is. They're all divided for some reason. Everything is divided, right? J-Spec, you're American.
Proudly. And and team number 50 often gets forgotten. Anyways, Hawaii, what's up? Man, so much stuff you guys said there. I don't even know where to pick up or where to run. There's so many good points made. Geez. I really don't even know what to say. But what I will say is Gutierrez and Song. My closing thoughts on this is just that one fighter brought exactly what everybody expected was going to happen, and that's what Gutierrez did. He kicked, right? He kicked and he kicked and he kicked, but there wasn't anything else. That's kind of the thing, right? Certain fighters, they don't have a plan B or another thing they can do really, really well. He's a great kicker. He kicked, but it just wasn't enough to win the fight. And I don't know. That's really all I got to say on that one.
Yeah, well, this is interesting. Antoine, what's going on, man? And he said he saw on Twitter a guy said refs should serve suspensions for late stoppages. How do you guys feel about that? I don't know if they have to serve suspensions for late stoppages, but there must be some kind of review board, right, to go over like mistakes that are made by referees. And I don't know, you suspend them, but you have to have a review board to kind of go over mistakes made, right? And especially late stoppages or fouls or even like replays. But I think there should be something there. But I don't know about suspension. Would you suspend a referee, Dylan?
I mean, we have to figure out some sort of means to, I guess, sharpen the referees up a little bit. I mean, it's obviously in some of these cases like split-second calls, and sometimes it's like a benefit of hindsight thing. But we also have seen some stoppages recently, like not even, I guess, localized to this card that were pretty egregious when you see like everything back and whatnot. So I don't know. I guess I'm maybe not the best person to ask this. I feel like there's some sort of thing that needs to be done, maybe penalizing somebody to, I guess, subvert the refereeing errors going on, because it doesn't seem like whatever's happening is enough right now.
Well, here's the thing. As someone who's kind of curious about it, there's two kind of conflicting ideas, right? There's obviously all what we see as fans and what we want. We want, hey man, fix this. This is bullshit. which it is. I'm on that argument. Now, why the refs don't jump in and just take points, and I'm not 100% even if I agree with this all the way, but the reasoning I've gotten is in MMA, the refs try to not have any real influence over the outcomes of the fights as least as possible anyway, and that's the goal of every ref in every sport, believe it or not. NFL anyways, is the goal is to not be involved. The ref is like supposed to be like a ghost, basically, just not really there. And that's what MMA refs really try to do, not take away points, because in a 3-round fight, this isn't boxing, folks. We don't got 6 or 8 rounds to do math on. This is a 3-round fight. It's you take away point, you're drastically affecting the math and the outcome. So with all that being said, I get it to that degree. Now, with all that, going back to the fouls, the only way we can get the fight cleaner is to increase that take. It's a joke, just like Dylan just said. Dylan just said something I hear week after week by many fans week after week is, oh, why don't you just poke him in the eye and kick him in the nuts? You get a free one anyway. Bro, that is a bad look. If the consensus among the fans is, hey, why don't you just poke him in the eye and kick him in the nuts anyways, you get a free one. Okay, it's time that we make an adjustment. And the only way I've seen in other previous sports as a model is to foul, is to bring the foul on, right? Like, and once they start increasing that action, it's like putting speed traps out. You put speed traps out on certain roads, people stop speeding on that road. It's just the way it works. So yeah, to me, specifically with Gutierrez, because his hands was pointing out, my co-host Dan was pointing like for 10 seconds into the fight, he was like, man, he's kind of poking his fingers out. I think an eye poke's gonna happen. And it sure as hell did, which could have been detrimental. We how many eye pokes have we lost fights for already? I think a couple main events have already been squandered. Anyways, going on a tirade. The point is, the foul for the finger pokes to the eyes, it has to be one and done. Like first one, points happening. That has to happen. Next, the glove thing. I don't know, man. Real time, Gutierrez was looking for that forearm and it just kind of slid and then it got in there. There's other times where guys are like digging and purposely, maliciously, like really using it against them. I think this is one of those, like, yes, he was fouling. I don't think he was trying to. There you go. That's my takes on that.
All right. That sounds good, man. Anything could have happened, right? But the thing is like when Herb Dean went and grabbed his hand and said, yo, you can't grab the inside of the glove, he was complaining back about something else. It looked like he was like, yo, like he didn't even care about the fingers in the glove. He was just talking about something else. I think he was talking about hits to the back of the head, right? Which, that's also a tricky thing, right? In fighting where someone's on the ground and then they're just kind of like on top, pressuring them, with their hips, and then they kind of go up and then they punch somebody. Well, of course you could hit somebody in the back of the head because you're moving around trying to duck and dodge the punches, right? Elbows. So that could happen. But yeah, but like fence grabs and nut shots and eye pokes and these things, man, we need at least try to get rid of some of these, right? Hopefully we do. But anyways, now when we look at the bantamweight division, you got Song Yadong at number 7, right? And he just beat Chris Gutierrez, who actually stepped in on short notice, right? Who's number 15. But Song Yadong was supposed to fight Peter Yan, who's number 5. That was a good call out because, like, when you look at the rest of the roster, you got Aljo. Marab just signed up to fight Henry Cejudo. Sandhagen, I think he's injured. And then Marlon, who's fighting for the title. So pretty good call out, right? Let's see what happens with that, man. And Gutierrez, he's number 15. I don't think you should drop him from that number 15 spot. But there are some good fights for him. Like what's Dominic Cruz doing? He's sitting at number 10. He hasn't fought in how long? Like
You
I don't
leave Dom
understand.
Cruz alone.
How long is he gonna sit around for? Like in the
Forever.
rank. And they've done this
Forever.
for him. They've done this for him before too, right? Like they've
I'm the
let
wrong
him
guy to
sit around.
ask. I'm the
But
wrong guy
anyways,
to ask. Yeah.
but yeah, we'll see what happens with the division. But yeah, good call out for Song. He knows what he's doing, and his English is improving a lot. You know what I mean? You could kind of tell he's been around fighters because he just curses like a sailor, and that's kind of like a byproduct of learning English from fighters in the gym, because that's all they do is they just bust balls and curse at each other.
I was gonna say a lot of
Yeah,
interesting discourse. It seemed like there was a little bit of chatter from one of the fans towards Gutierrez there too.
oh,
So just
that's
all kinds of
right.
people chirping, right?
Yeah, I wonder what that was about. But yeah, like that. I
Few
just
too many
realized at that
Modelos.
point.
You blew
Yeah,
my
I
parlay,
realized.
bro.
I realized at that point is like the apex is like the perfect place to heckle somebody in well during a fight. You know what I mean? Like where else can you do it where it's that silent, where the noise is not that high? You know what I mean? It's hard to
See,
find a place.
and that's the thing. I mean, if you're gonna, but they're also smart. Like you're gonna have to pay the price because Apex tickets are
Yeah.
expensive.
But if you hate somebody a lot, hate really drives someone to spend money.
I,
Okay.
I'm
If
glad
you
I don't know
kill.
what that's like. Jeez,
Yeah. Well,
I only buy tickets for love.
we'll see, man. We'll see what the Apex. Now co-main event, right? Let's go into the co-main event. This was kind of like a late shuffle between Khalil Rountree and Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, man, he did a lot better than I thought he would have. To be honest with you, like he took some shots, ate them, and marched forward. And he had a very aggressive game plan against Khalil Rountree, who's probably one of the most terrifying strikers we have on the roster, right? In the UFC. Not even at light heavyweight, just in the UFC. Like he's like when he hits people, it's like they meet their future kids in another dimension and come back and be like, "Oh, I don't know if this is worth my life right now." You know what I mean? Like he hits people so hard and it's just so devastating. Um, I don't know what to think of Khalil though, man, because like he like in the octagon in the cage, he's phenomenal, but outside of it, it's like I don't know, like he doesn't do anything. Like he shows like a different side of fighters and everything like that, but then I don't know, like if you could push that into that top five, you know what I mean, like that type of story. I don't know. It's just hard. What do you think, Jay Spector, about Khalil Rountree and his potential?
Well, one, got to meet the guy. He's pretty stoic. Like he's just pretty chill. And maybe he's just really true to that version. So you're not gonna get a lot of razzle dazzle from the guy. I just didn't get that vibe from him. He's real chill. And then besides that, he's clearly good. One thing though is criticism, and I'm not fighting him, was just like you could see him, and maybe it's just because the opponent he had in Mr. Smith in front of him, knowing that he's not going to be the most elusive man in the world, he was like cocking shots. Like some of the ones he missed, they were like it was like a 5-second reload period. Like he shot a cannon or something, which he was blowing cannon out there. It was awesome. But man, what else can we ask of him? Like he's just awesome. And on the other side of that, Mr. Smith, like you said, John, I agree with you 100%. Way better, way better. Literally, okay. Obviously, it ended the way it ended in a spectacular fashion for Mr. Roundtree, but that sequence, I thought that was happening in like the first minute, dude. Like I I was not in for it. Lionheart once again showing exactly why he has that nickname, why he's earned it, why he has everybody's mutual respect, even though fighters are calling him out because they want his ranked spot. But anyways, regardless, like saving a card, coming in game, he got rocked like two separate times before the final sequences in like different parts of different rounds and found a way to stay in it. That's a fighter, dude. That's a fighter. And the people who are like, "Oh, retire," and like, okay, I get it, losing streak, whatever. But like, bro, that to me, that's a fighter who's game. Like, if he wants and whatever he wants in his life, he's earned it by this point. But like, I think it's weird that people are calling for a guy to retire when he like fought really good on short notice against a guy who would just blow out most dudes like in that bracket, in that realm. So, anyways, there you go. Yeah, that's my take on that.
Yeah, when you're in a position like uh like Anthony Smith, right, where he's fought for the title, he's he's not once he was the top echelons of the division. Now he's kind of on his way slowly down, right? And he's facing all these killers that are coming up. And clearly he has a job with fucking ESPN and the UFC. Like, in his position, would you continue fighting though? Like, I would never say a fighter should retire, but like, that you're not able to compete with the best guys that are coming up right now, right? The ones that want your position. But you have a good job, right? You have a podcast with Michael Bisping. When do you decide to say like, yo, I have other things going on in my life, fighting and getting like, because there's been some terrible beatdowns, right, in the last couple of fights, Dylan. Like, what do you think with Anthony Smith?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with your assessment. I mean, I would wonder how, I guess, Anthony perceives his situation, because, I mean, he could look at it as like he still has a certain level of aptitude to fight guys who are kind of on the come up. Like, not to say this as a pejorative, obviously, but maybe more of that like gatekeeper kind of role almost, like be that guy where, if you get a victory over Anthony Smith, it's like, well, fair enough. He could be getting into that territory where you're 1 or 2 wins away from a title shot. Whereas if you take a loss, it's like, oh, okay, maybe they need to be, developed and refined a little bit more before getting up here. And that was, I guess, one of my takeaways from even seeing that Rountree fight, because again, like, Rountree was always to me one of those guys that, I mean, obviously very talented, very exciting, but I don't know, it wasn't exactly a guy that maybe I saw as being in the tier that he is now, like, a win over a former title challenger, where, I mean, he did call out Alex Pereira, which I couldn't see next necessarily, but I mean, who's to say 1 or 2 more emphatic wins of that nature doesn't, get him kind of in that conversation. So I think that fight served the master of, I guess, kind of getting Rountree more into that, tier for me, or like perceiving him a little different from like, exciting action fighter to like, oh, this guy might be kind of close to a title shot.
Yeah, he did call out Alex Pereira, and that's a good strategy for him. He's kind of like lining it up, for a future fight. But who knows if Alex Pereira is going to even be a champion by then? And if he's not, still that fight is interesting. Still, like, if he loses the title in his next fight, and Alex Pereira is coming off like, I could see the strategy of Khalil Rountree. Like, if he's the champion, great. If he's not, that's still a huge fight because he's a former champion, and then the style is great for Khalil Rountree as well. It's not like the dude's gonna try to wrestle him. They're gonna go shot for shot, and I think Khalil's confident enough to where he feels like he might have more power than Alex Pereira, right? Which is great. I love to see that confidence, right? But yeah, it's just I still can't figure him out yet, right? Because the thing is, if someone fights him that's like more of a pressure fighter, can he still do that? Because it seems like he does have problems with guys that pressure him. You know what I mean? Like, really get in his face, right? Just going back to the Johnny Walker fight, right? Johnny Walker got straight into his face and finished him, right? But this is a different Khalil Rountree as well. So we'll see. You know what I mean? Has he been working on this other skill sets or whatnot? I think he has. I think he's really dedicated.
Well, I don't think you're wrong at all, John. Look at this fight right now. Look at the fight we just had. When Smith was fresh and pre first bell ringing, if you will. Mr. Smith was trying to put on the pressure. He was trying to probably implement the game plan you just mentioned, really. And he was short notice. So what, like that is the El Clasico maneuver when you really think about it. So he was, and really go back, watch. What does your mind tell you? Man, Khalil at first for a while was backing up and wasn't outputting much. Like, his style does not suit backing up. It doesn't. But once he got, like, I think it was a counter hook or it was a counter straight. Who knows? I can't remember that part. But once he rung Mr. Smith the first time and he could get his march going forward, everything changed, So you're right.
Everything did change, man. And man, great performance by Khalil Rountree. A guy that hates the media, pretty much. He does. Like, I've interviewed him one time. As a favor to one of his coaches. But after that, he's just like, he'll avoid any kind of interviews unless it's, I guess, the UFC makes him do it. Which, if you notice, he doesn't really do any interviews, right? Unless it's like beneficial for him, on like if it's Joe Rogan or something like that. Which I think anybody would probably do that podcast, right? Anyways, make sure you guys go in the descriptions, download the AllStar app, join JSpec's League. He's got the the promotion going on right now, if you go in there and pick for UFC 296 next weekend, if you're the best, if you gain the most points, he's gonna give you the prize. Number one prize is an autographed glove. Is it autographed glove or gloves?
Singular, one glove.
Singular glove, right? Autographed
Yes,
glove from Ensign Inoue. I believe he's a. If there's a Pride FC Hall of Fame, he would be in it, right? You know,
Oh yeah.
he's on the pioneer wing. You know what I mean, of
definitely.
many Hall of Fames, if there was Hall of Fame. If he's not in the UFC Hall of Fame, I don't know why he's not there. He should be there, right? He's Pride. If you don't
Eventually,
know about it,
eventually, they'll get it
yeah.
around to it eventually.
So if you want to win that and hang it up on your wall in your man cave or your lady cave or whatnot, you know, go make the pick. Go download the app. Join the league. Anyways, let's go to the next fight coming up. Not coming up, but next fight on the
Third fight of the night.
okay. Third fight of the night, lightweight
From the
division.
top.
Nasrat Hak Hakparast, right? Nasrat Hakparast and Jamie
Hakparast.
Malarkey, right?
Yeah,
Man, Jamie Malarkey's a pretty tough veteran, but man, Nasrat went in there and just did his thing. Just did his thing. Just real nice, right? He's turning into a really, really solid prospect, man. I really enjoy watching him fight and watching his progression. You know, I feel like a lot of people gave up on him. You know what I mean? Because I think he was inactive for a little bit, a lot of cancel fight as well. But after losing to Bobby Green and Dan Hooker back to back, which he wasn't finished in those fights, he's on a 3-fight win streak now. He's beat Medesi, he beat Quinones, and then he just finished Jamie Malarkey. Jamie Malarkey, we'll get into him, but Nasrat, Dylan, what do you think of him, like as a lightweight up and comer?
Yeah, I mean, very exciting within a Shark Tank of a division, and I think you kind of covered it well there. Just like the relative inactivity, like maybe some people were, I guess, not having like quite the refreshed kind of image of what his skills are and what his like aptitude in the cage is. And I feel like more on the analyst level, like when they were talking heading into the fight, I feel like Nasrat Hakparast had the sort of performance that almost was like commensurate with the hype, if that makes sense. Like it aligned with like how the analysts were talking about him, and it seemed like the sort of performance that he would, I guess, want to have to really like assert himself at that higher kind of level in the division, or at least inform that idea. But yeah, definitely an exciting guy for sure, man.
Yeah, without a doubt. And Nasrat, you know what I mean? He joined the promotion in 2017 and he's only had 12 fights, right? Think about it. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21,
it's like
22.
two. That's like two a year.
Yeah, that's not a very active thing. But the thing is, like, there's some fights that he's been lined up to fight and they've been canceled. Like, he was supposed to fight Armin Sarukian back in 2021, and he was supposed to fight Don Madge, which are great matchups right there. So he's not afraid to get matched up with these top level guys, man. I like his style. I think he's doing good. Is he up to that Bobby Green, Dan Hooker level yet? I don't know. What do you think, J Spec?
I think those are two different levels, my friend. And I think the Dan Hooker level and the Bobby Green level are two different levels, respectfully. Dan Hooker is higher. But regardless, Nasrat, dude, I've been throwing the hey, put some respect on this dude's name for a cold minute ever since that loss to Mr. Hooker, because it wasn't about that loss. I campaign all the time for Mr. Hooker and Nasrat because both of them were professionals to the capital letter from front to the end of the word, because they flew across more than half the earth, both of them, on like 14 hours notice, made weight and fought. Like, all those are the people who make excuses and all kinds of stuff. Man, I don't know. You know, I don't live that life, but I can say those two guys. And from that point, Nasrat just always had my respect, and I'm watching him get better and better. In retrospect, man, maybe kind of good he didn't fight Sarukian. You know, it's cool. Like, hey, challenging yourself like you did. Okay, cool. But then you got to build up some wins. Then challenge yourself again. You know, you don't want to stack up losses. I think nowadays people lean a little bit too much on the polite phrase of, "Oh, that's a good a good loss to have," or "That's a credible loss." It is. There's circumstances where that's true, but in any case, Nasrat Hakparas moving in the right direction. I hope I said his name as close as possibly correct. Anyways, he's trending in the right direction. Good to see it. The performance though, like almost, I mean, comic level. Like it was like a shoe shine drill. He was just like, this is like 100 punches. I know it was 100, but it was spectacular. Like that wasn't normal highlight stuff, and it wasn't like some just one shot brutal KO. Like it was pretty actually cool sequence to watch. So thank you.
All right. Well, Jamie Malarkey, man, the guy goes out there and fights. Like I think this was his third fight of the year, fourth fight of the year, maybe.
It feels like he's always
But
fighting.
yeah, he's always fighting, and he always risks it, man. He always puts it out there, like he wants this. He wants to make a fight for the fans, and sometimes it doesn't work out your way, man. This is what happens. You put yourself at risk, and Nasrat clearly he's reached a higher level, his potential, but we don't know. Maybe that's his potential. Maybe he's we're gonna see more from him. We have no idea right now, but it's trending really well for him, man. Like he's done really well for himself. Malarkey, we'll see what happens when he comes back. I think the UFC keeps him around for a long time. He's one of the he's kind of like in that. He's like a young Jim Miller. Like he'll go and fight whoever, right? And he's always gonna fight them, and he's gonna win some, he's gonna lose some. You know what I mean? Maybe he turns it around and becomes like a top 15 fighter. Who knows? But I always watch Jamie Malarkey. That's what it is. Um, let's move on to the next one. Flyweight division. Shu Mudarji versus Tim Elliott, right? Shu Mudarji, he was hyped. He was hyped, right?
A little bit.
Off 2 straight wins. He was all hyped off like actually 3 straight wins. Lost his debut, then had 3 straight wins, and then he reached Matt Schnell and Tim Elliott. Now, the Matt Schnell fight, he did really well until Matt Schnell was one of the best fights of that year. But Matt Schnell came back and showed that veteran salve, and Tim Elliott just steamrolled him, right? I think this is the case of he's not as good as we thought he was. And now we're seeing that he needs more time to develop. He needs more time to fight the lower level guys in the division. Him being pushed into Matt Schnell and Tim Elliott, it could be good, but it could be really bad for him. You know what I mean? Just in confidence wise, like you lose back to back like that, finish both times by submission. It's not a good thing for your mental space, right? Especially with the long layoffs. Man, he was supposed to fight Manel Kape. Man, Manel Kape would have rampaged him, right? Just it would have been bad. But Tim Elliott, man, what can you say, Dylan, about Tim Elliott? The man he's the most awkward. He's awkward MMA, right? Like he's the most awkward guy, but he's so good. Like he's so good when he's on. Like he can beat anybody. That's why he's dangerous. Like he could go into a title fight and he'll just approach it like any other fight. It's not a big deal for him. What about you? What do you think, Tim Elliott?
Yeah, man, as you were talking about this fight, I mean, low key, I was thinking Tim Elliott is actually one of the more like demonstrably dangerous and proven like flyweights in company history, if you think about it, right? So to fight a guy like Sumadarji and whatnot, I mean, like you said, I mean, probably gives a certain level of insight into maybe he shouldn't be facing that tier of competition at this juncture. And I guess to be fair, I mean, I do rate Tim Elliott fairly high in the division, even though he has had certain ups and downs, but like former title challenger. And like I said, I think like low key, one of the more like accomplished flyweights in UFC history. I mean, I just thought that was such an exciting, incredible fight. So, I mean, hats off to both guys for providing great excitement ultimately. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see the paths both of these guys kind of go to thereafter. I mean, I'm going to be tuning into either fight. I'm sure both will be exciting in their own right.
Yeah, with Shu Mudarji, it's interesting that the UFC try to push him like that. You know what I mean? Because he's still super young. I don't think like you should have been pushing him like that to fight the guys that are. because these are vets, right? Like real veterans of the flyweight division, Matt Schnell and Tim Elliott. It's not like they just become like a, it's not like they're like a, what's his name in the flyweight division? Let me see. I'm blanking on this guy's name. Yeah, it's not like he's like a let's say a David Dvorak or something like that, right? That's a fight that you can put together, and I would think it would be a decent matchup for Shumadarji, right? Like a striker, right? The guy that can grapple, but he's a striker mostly. I don't know, like why they would push him into these spots where clearly these guys are grapplers, submission experts, and now he's getting submitted by everybody. J-Spec, what do you think?
Well, I mean, maybe that. Okay, it was my memory. Excuse me, my memory might be failing, but wasn't Tim filled in for this fight, right?
Yeah.
So, like, maybe this is one of those times where like the reshuffle of the deck really backfires on the person who was set up originally, because maybe like in all honesty and fairness, maybe like fighting Tim Elliott wasn't like on his wish list or to-do list at all yet, but the cookie crumbles, as they say, and it just was what it was. On the other side, great job Tim. I was a little bit like, oh cool, like that seems interesting that you're taking on the short notice fight against, no disrespect to Sumandarji, but I just felt like if you take an L there, then it's like it's really not good for you, right? So, but who cares what I think? Came in there and just like he made it look easy, and I don't like to say that phrase too often, man. He like there was just a huge gap in performance there. So yeah, good job overall. So Mudarji, I don't have anything to say other than this part. The whole pushing him and his young thing. I think, and I'm just guessing, the UFC does this, and we see it from time to time. It's just like they take random bets, if you will, gambles on just like, let me promote these guys in markets. Let me finish. In markets where they're trying to establish themselves, because it really does take a few years for the hardcores or even a fan base to grow up, like watching someone be active. We were watching it during the fights, so we were talking about it last week. The duration of time that we've been watching certain fighters like Gastelum and others like that. For some fighters, it's for some fans, these fighters, some fans are only fans of the sport for 10 years or so. So these are the fighters, they were really young. They're 20 something when they got in the sport. And then now it's the guys they remember. It's their guys they hang on to. So doesn't really surprise me, given the fact that they clearly want to try to do something with China, whether or not our two political systems can get along. Anyways, done with that.
Yeah, hopefully they give him something, to build himself up for the next year. But the UFC, it's weird how they handle some of their fighters. Like some of their fighters they'll handle with care. Some of them they'll just be like, chew them up and spit them out. And some of them they survive through the chew them up, spit them out, era. They survive through that, and they're like, oh, no, the UFC's like, oh, we got something here then. And then some of them are, kids' gloves. It all depends on who you are and how you want to be handled. Let's go to the last fight on the main card, which was a split decision win for Andre Muniz. And this fight, it brings up the argument of judging, right? Like, do you judge off control time or do you judge off damage? And, I know that Park didn't do like that much damage, but he did more damage than Muniz did, right? Muniz was just trying to win the fight, it seemed like. Like he was on a losing streak. Even after the fight, he seemed pretty emotional, right? Like he probably lost all confidence in himself, after those types of performances. And he went back into the grappling. I know it was Park's fault that he couldn't get away, right? But then you're like, this is a fight. Is this a fight? Or are we watching? I don't know. Like, if we're watching a fight, the judging should be off damage. Dylan, what do you think, man? Like, you know the rules better than me probably, but like I just think like if you win a fight, you should win a fight off damage, right? Not if you just hug somebody and control them and don't let them get away.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, man. I mean, I do very much value the damage over the control time. I mean, I feel like if you're going to prioritize a more control-focused game, like at least intersperse a bit of something, whether that's like trying to advance position or a bit of ground and pound or just a submission attempt. I mean, anything that shows advancement and desire to at least do something to end the fight, however intentional or performative. Like even just like a little bit of ground and pound, like little something. I mean, that's easier said than done, obviously. Like I say that from a layman perspective, but I mean, just serving the point of like the judging criteria. It's like if you're going to go the control is the predominant path for me kind of route, I would like to see at least a bit of damage or a little bit of something interspersed in there, whether that's to reiterate, mixing in a bit of ground and pound, working in a submission, or trying to advance position. So that would probably be what I would say on that.
Imagine if a title fight played out like that. How pissed would the UFC be if Andre Muniz won the title and that's how he was defending the title every single time?
Well, to that end, right? I mean, I'm not trying to go too far off shit, but earlier this season, right, the PFL reshuffled their playoffs because there was a performance that went similar like this. Yes, there was a crazier backstory, whatever. But going back to this judging, okay, I get it that we can, like, as fans, go all over the place on like what we think we want to see in a fight and how it should kind of be. But there's a thing called athletic commissions and the the rules and the written scoring criteria, and it changed. This whole like thinking about the fight as a whole and trying to prioritize them but then give credit to each area and balance it out, that was the old stuff. It was convoluted and hard to go with. That's why we've moved on. That's why they redid the rules in 2014, 16, whatever. You guys help me out. But the point is, they redid them and they reworded the criteria to point out damage over everything. Literally, all the rest of the stuff is next. So, and that's only, those other things only come into play if there's not the previous in front of it. The previous in front of everything is number one, and that is damage. So to me, this is not a matter of debating between us or talking. Like, it's just about, like, once again, kind of like what John talked about way earlier in this show. Like, what are these? I know the refs are having pre-fight meetings with themselves exclusively, but what is happening then? Because, and it's not just the refs, but the judges too. The judges is what I meant to say. The judges are getting together before the fights. How is everybody not like, hey, did you get the memo? Did you get the memo from 2016? The one that says damage over everything? I mean, I don't know what we're talking about, fellas. If this was a job, like, we'd all be like, what's the protocol? What does the paper say? It says damage, not control time. It's not that convoluted old school way of doing stuff. So there's too many old school judges stuck in the old school format. You wouldn't allow this anywhere else for anything else. Anyways, there you go. That's my take on that. It's just simple. Follow what's on the paper and the story.
Yeah, didn't they get the memo from 2005? You know what I mean?
That's the one they're reading. They're reading the one from 05. Get the one from 2016.
It's like, yo, here's a memo, and I'm gonna give it to the judge at the table. It's like a folded up piece of paper. It's like, here's a memo from the commission, and the judge opens it. It says, "You're an idiot." Right? That's the memo right there.
That's it.
That's the memo for every judge. No, I'm just kidding. Not every judge is. I've had a judge, I think, message me on Twitter about, like, you can't be like attacking the judges like that, and I was like, I'm just attacking those judges. Like, I'm not attacking you as a judge. You know what I mean? But I attack the commission. I attack the commission more than anything because they're the fucking idiots that are in control of all this. Look, California State, they just passed slap fight. Like, could you take a California State athletic commission seriously anymore? At all? Like, could we take them seriously?
Cash rules everything around me.
And they call it a fight. Like, they call the slap matches a fight. right?
Well, that's the unfortunate part of it, because like you have to imagine they're using the leverage of the UFC because of how much
Yeah,
capital that's going to bring. So they're going to start packaging it. I mean, I think I even saw this on Twitter. I think Hunter Campbell had stated they're going to do like even like package weekends. Like they'll do like a slap fight thing the night before at a smaller venue in conjunction with like a UFC card. So I mean, even in that kind of anecdote, you can tell they're sort of leveraging like that position of the UFC to. And I really don't like seeing stuff like that too. I mean, not to sidebar too much, but like, I mean, like money speaks, but I mean, a regulatory body is supposed to be looking out for regulatory minded things, the safety of the fighters, the ethical nature of the sport, the efficacy of everything, etc. And I mean, that's obviously not what was going on there, but yeah, I mean, anyway.
brother.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you're right. For us, the fans, that's what we think. That's what we want. That's what it's supposed to mean and stand for. But the reality is, the commission is just there to keep all things level and straight for gambling to keep to be on it. That's the real the shit end of the stick. The next part, the commissions are a government agency, and like all other government agency, what is their primary function? Don't kid yourself. What is it to do in the United States? It's not to serve the people. Don't lie. It is to collect taxes. That is right. It's to
Yeah.
collect taxes, to make revenue for the state. Okay, and that's what they do. That's why they said okay with the slap fighting, because I think it's like 10% of gate. I think, and once again, misquote me, whatever, but I think they make 10% of gate. That's why. So that's a function of making revenue for the state, and that's their job. Their job is, hey, let's commission as many things as we can so we can make gate money. We cut off the top, and that's what it is. That's the business of sport, people, and it sucks, but that's the reality of the commission. They're not there to do all the other things we want them to do. Step one, do the paperwork so it's legal for gambling. Step two, collect 10% of gate for the state. That's their mission.
Yeah,
Well,
well said.
yeah, they got a lot of power, man. The UFC has a lot of power, and they could push a lot of things into certain markets that they want because of the leverage of the UFC, right? Like, all these you see all these promotions, like local promotions, they're like, "Oh, the UFC is coming into town, so we're going to have a show the day before to, piggyback off the UFC." And that was like a great thing, you know what I mean? Now all of that is probably going to be gone because they're going to put in slap fight in those venues, right? In those cities now, and they're gonna travel. There's not much they need to take to set up a slap fight event, right? There's not much out there that you need a
It doesn't seem like it,
table,
no.
some
It doesn't seem
pillows, and
like
some mouth guards. You know what I mean? And you could
A
use the
person to
same
catch the people
referee.
falling over, I guess. Like
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, you just get a bunch of the Muay Thai refs just sliding out like grabbing heads. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
They might
they're the
need to get
best in the
those
world.
guys.
Best in the world.
Yeah. But yeah, that slap fight thing is just, to me,
Okay,
it's
okay.
ridiculous.
Let's jump in. Can I throw that back at you guys? I mean, how long can a promote? I mean, obviously they got a butt ton of money. That's not it. But like, how long do you think they could push something that people do not want? Because I'll be honest, I was on season 1. I watched it. I goofed around, was playing around with it and following it, and like just kind of going with it. But honestly, I've tried to watch it and I cannot. I've actually abandoned ship. And nobody I know, all the hardcores that show up week after week to our watch parties, John, they don't want to even see. I mean, we're talking about the people that watch Obscurity FC on .org. These guys are not watching slap fighting. And if I cannot get those ladies and gentlemen to watch, who the hell's watching it? I guess is the question.
Who knows, man? Who knows? But yeah, let's move on from that. I don't want to give too much like thought into like slap fight. Let's get into this this the prelims, right? I think there's some like really bright prospects on the prelims that we saw, and I think a lot of people are just gonna glance over it, but I think we do have some solid solid prospects coming up. Let me name a few. I think Kevin Jousset, the City Kickboxing Frenchman, welterweight division. Now he's 2-0 in the UFC. I think he's a pretty solid talent coming out of City Kickboxing. And the funny thing is, like, he speaks, well, he's French, so he has a French accent, but he's from City Kickboxing, which is kind of completely different from anybody you hear from City Kickboxing. But he's solid. Hyun Park, undefeated Korean flyweight, made his UFC debut. I don't know if it was officially, but I don't know. It's weird because if you win the Road to UFC, that means you won your first debut fight, which was the finals. I believe that's what it was. I don't know, but I guess this was his UFC debut. He did really well, man. He's mainly, if you watch his fights when he was young, like earlier in his career, he was like more of like a ground guy, but he's clearly like elevated his striking because Sandra Ross is a striker and Park was doing really well against him. Steve Garcia, he's been around for a little bit, but he's found his groove at 155. I think that's like 3 finishes in a row for Steve Garcia. Tatsuro Tiara, he's another two solid Asian prospects, right? Undefeated, both of them in the flyweight division. Tiara and Park. My favorite fighter in the UFC, Luana Santos, she won her fight. Yeah, that's about it. What do you guys think? Let's start with you, Dylan. Who stuck out the most for you in that prelim?
Yeah, I mean, the Tatsuro Taira fight definitely stuck out to me. It's just, I really enjoy that flyweight division, and it's cool to see. I mean, obviously, we're far away from it now, but like, it's crazy that the discourse was there at one point where Dana was maybe even thinking of just doing away with the division. And I think like the more time we get away from that, the more it, I guess, ages in a certain like complementary way. Like, it really just shows the depth of the division and what that weight category has to offer. So, I mean, I thought that was a great win. And yeah, I mean, I also thought the opening fight was interesting too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the decision, I mean, split decisions usually are of that sort of persuasion, but I definitely thought maybe like Ray and Amanda could have gotten that, nod as well. And it seemed like maybe some people on social media thought the same. But I mean, either way, a good performance by Talita Alankar as well.
Yeah, she's a jiu-jitsu girl. I was supposed to interview her, but something happened. But yeah, what do you think, J-Spec? Who stood out for you?
Well, I gotta just say the people agreed with you, Dylan. Live, and while we're watching, the fans were just like, "Yeah, we were a little shocked at that decision, and we agree with you, sir." Anyways, man, you guys took it. I mean, it's not like there were so many to choose from. Obviously, Mr. Park coming in was pretty strong, but I gotta go with Mr. Tyra. Because the reason why I'm going with Tyra is because obviously he's respected for his ground attack. And he, still showed he could dominate there, but then he knocked the dude out. And I like to see. I don't, like John was alluding to earlier in the show. When you go way up and you're ranked, and then you're kind of, you're famous, and you're kind of buying into the people's criticisms or buying into what they may say about how you're doing or how you're finishing fights or what you should be or how entertaining you are, whatever's. But when you're early on in your career, early on in just what Tyra is, and you're checking the boxes, I'm not saying go and force anything, or don't go out there like forcing the issue when things ain't working. But hey, I know my plan A is working. Let me experiment a little bit with plan B. Oh shit, got the knockout. All right, sweet. And that's what I felt like I saw. So for me, yeah, man, that fight was the one I guess to me, the prelims wise, got me going. But overall energy of the fights was kind of like herky jerky. Like, I felt like it never really got that consistent, like fans were getting excited. We were like, got excited, a little bit let down. Excited, okay, pause in the action. But that was the kind of overall energy for the night. But yeah, man, to me, Tyra stood out. He showed his value on the betting line if you're into that kind of thing. Like I said, mixing it up, getting that knockout, diversifying as you grow. But other than that, yeah, a good. Once again, I will say I'm grateful for all these fights that we have. Like, you guys been fans a long time and watching for a long time. It's nice to have multiple fights a month. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah, it was a good solid. I think Tiara, Park, Giuseppe, you know what I mean? Those are going to be, yeah, I'm more interested, like you guys said, in the flyweight prospects. Like Park and Tiara, they're super young and undefeated. And finishing guys in the UFC, right? Which is, it shows you a lot, like how advanced they are at their age, right? So we'll see. You know what I mean? We'll see when they lose for the first time as well, and see how they handle it. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting to see that, as play out in a fighter's career. It's like when they lose for the first time, how do they bounce back? You know, we've seen fighters come in with like the hype and the undefeated record, and then they lose, and then they fizzle out. Like they win a couple, they lose a couple, and then they never reach their potential that we thought they would become. That's what's great about fighting. We get to see that play out in front of our eyes. So we'll see.
Did you end up on a different promotion fighting an old school legend?
And then winning $1 million, right? Like back to back, some of them, like
I was making a Sage Northcutt dig fighting Shinya Aoki, and then you hit me with a PFL counter. That was beautiful.
Well, the thing about the PFL, right? Because it's been around for a few years now, right? What how many years has the PFL been around for?
As that brand since 2018, but they existed as WSOF right before that.
Okay, so 2018 PFL began, right? To now, whoever has won $1 million in the tournaments, in the seasons up to this point, have had, to be honest with you, the least amount of resistance to winning that money. Now, with the addition of Bellator, that season is going to be crazy, I think. The seasons that they're going to put together with the fighters that they want to jump into the $1 million season, or that they won in the $1 million season, now it's going to be tough. Now we're going to see guys going through the ringer. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to see like a Daniel Pineda come in and just win like that. Like, that's not going to happen anymore. That era of PFL seasons is over. This new era coming in with the division, like think about the featherweight division now with the tournament going on. Like, the season going on with the talent of the featherweight and lightweight, and like the division, the seasons that they have going right now, it just becomes crazy, right? Like the talent pool that Bellator introduces. And they could start a bantamweight one as well right now with the roster that Bellator even has, right? And they could sign a couple other guys if they wanted to, and have a season to, So
I hope they do that, because it seems like there's still like a couple divisions that, PFL doesn't have, that at least I think I saw a statement from Don Davis indicating they weren't looking to, I guess, instantiate those on the PFL level. But at the same time, it's like, how do you not have a bantamweight division or a middleweight division, especially when you have like the immense surplus of talent you have now? It just kind of, I don't know, it seems inexcusable in a certain sense. Like, it's like, how do you not even just think to, I don't know, just like interject those fighters like right into your own ranks? Like, just have the Bellator middleweight division be your middleweight division if you're like worried about like a depth thing or something like that. Like, I guess, yeah, I'd like to see it go in that direction.
Yeah, because like I understand the whole concept of like certain fighters are not made for seasons, right? They just can't get through the season. Their body won't allow them to. And he gave an example of Anthony Pettis. Like, he would be a guy that you'd see on like the Bellator pay-per-view type cards, and then the PFL pay-per-view type cards, but like once or twice a year. I see that. That's great, right? But a lot of these guys, they're not making that much money, right? So the season and winning $1 million is just, the risk is worth the reward, right? Because they believe that they're the best in the world. But yeah, it's crazy that they don't add like a bantamweight division. But the thing is, it's all about money too. You know what I mean? Do they have the money to even do all of that, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I was gonna just say, one, it's a little weird to jump onto Dylan's point, because they once did. They just a couple years ago they had a middleweight division. So like to have it and then go away from it, if that's something you never did ever. But they also switched up. They used to have a women's 55, which was mental, and then now they're at 45K, so whatever. It's just like they're still obviously finding their footing on certain topics. But like you guys, with this merging of the roster, not possibly, but officially, and oh man, what dreams may come. Like, that's all I can say. Like, go whatever it is. Just hope it's the best. That's what I'm here for.
For sure. And yeah, I'm very interested. Next year is going to be a big year for combat sports in general. Like, to see the trajectory of the promotions, right? Especially like with the UFC and Power Slap going in one direction, right? And then you got PFL and Bellator going in another direction. and you got one championship going in another direction, and seeing
I,
like what's gonna happen and play out. So
I
that's
would like
really,
to. I would like to also add the insert boxing mogul money, boxing money. You know, money is now sliding in and going. Hey, I can take some of your stars and make a few bucks. Let's do it. It's a
yeah,
new player in the game.
and then also what is it? Bare knuckle, right? Bare knuckle is growing too. Like they're
Huge.
spreading
Fans
out, and
love it. The
yeah,
amount that fans hate power slap, polar opposite, insert bare knuckle. Like,
yeah, bare knuckle is getting huge, man. And that Middle Eastern money as well is coming in to bare knuckle. We'll see what happens with that. Antoine has a question. He said, "Do you guys feel? How do you guys feel about the owner of PFL dissing Dana? Like, can they actually compete with UFC?" Um, well, they're gonna diss each other. What, like, I just think that's just natural. It's competition, right?
I think it'll be interesting to see what this antitrust lawsuit could do in the next year, and
Yeah,
as far as like how that could, because I mean, honestly, like just the brand notoriety of something like the UFC. I mean, the reason the antitrust lawsuit is happening is because like the brand awareness is to the scale of it being a monopsony. Like obviously, I'm simplifying it for the point, but I mean, it just really speaks to like how prevalent they are. I mean, I feel like something like the antitrust lawsuit could be intriguing in the context of how it could serve what PFL's momentum is too. Like, I don't know, it'll be a very interesting 2024 in that sense because, I mean, outside of that, I mean, it's hard for me to like see a scenario where PFL can get in closer proximity to where the UFC's at in like competition kind of sense. But it seems like the PFL guys are looking at the whole thing as like a more long-term effort. So see where it goes.
yeah, for sure, man. It's gonna be a crazy year. You know what I mean, for everybody, even people covering the sport. It could change how the sport is covered. You know what I mean, it seems like it's slowly changing anyways right now. Everybody's trying to do the same thing. Everybody's trying to be an influencer, not a,
Yeah.
you know. Well, we'll see what happens, man. Like, there's a lot of things going on right now. Um, but let's before we get out of here, man. We got a little bit of time. Let's talk about next week's some of the card fights on next week's card, right? Something that I think the last card of the year, UFC 296, Las Vegas. We have Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington for the welterweight title. Colby Covington, everybody hates him. Well, most
not
people hate him. Uh, they always point to him not being active and him being his character and like him not beating a top 15 opponent, but he's still ranked and he's still going to fight for the title. I'm picking Colby Covington to win this fight. I think he wins this fight. I think he goes in there, and I think it's just stylistic matchup. Leon can beat um, Usman, right? And I think because another factor of Usman is his health. I think he's reached to a point where like Usman is not at that time when he fought Leon, he wasn't as healthy as he should have been, and strategically he probably made a lot of errors against Leon. But I think in this fight coming up against Colby, the matchup just, in my eyes, it just favors Colby. I think Colby wins this fight. It might not be the most exciting fight, but I think Colby like understood like I've had my exciting fights. Now I have to just win this strap. I have to win this belt. Like this, it could be the most boring fight in the world, but the thing is, he'll get on the mic and twist it around somehow if he wins the belt, even in a boring fight.
hmm
Let's start with you, J Spec. What do you think about the main event?
Okay, I agree with you on your pick. And then shout out to Antoine, Florida man himself. So Florida man gonna get it. But anyways, man, all I can say is like there's just like the two opposite dudes in the most every kind of way, right? Like obviously it's they're just so opposite that it just forces me into a USA chant. I'm blindly pledging allegiance to the flag and rolling with Colby Covington on this one. I just don't vibe with Leon, man. I just don't. I just can't. I don't know why. I'm not the biggest Colby fan, so don't get me wrong, but I think he's just more entertaining. Now, on the other side of that, veteran fighter in Colby Covington, people going, "Oh, there's all this time off." Sometimes dudes, that's the best thing for a veteran because Colby's got all the skills. It's not like he's got to learn new shit. He's just got to apply what he's already known really well. Like you said, John, win. Just like we were talking about, right? I can get behind you and hold your hips for, what is it, 25 minutes in the championship fight, 22 minutes of the 25 minutes. I'm the new champion of the world, baby. Like that's the reality of this match. That's a very high probability because, like you said, Colby's just got to win. Colby's pretty smart. He plays the dummy, but he's actually kind of smart. And he knows what he got to do to increase his brand and increase in value, and that's important to him. And so I go with that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Dylan, what you got?
I mean, I guess my first thought I had, it wasn't necessarily directly like oriented to like how the two styles play against each other. I mean, and this could be anecdotal, just what I happen to be seeing, but I feel like most of the discourse from this fight around like Leon Edwards, like anytime I see an interview, I feel like it's almost more focused on what he's looking at after this. And I feel like anytime I see stuff like that, it kind of gives me pause where I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, I get that you always want to have like a next thing, and it's a goal-oriented sport for sure. And I mean, very driven, goal-oriented people. But when you start like mostly talking about like, oh, 2-division champ, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, sort of makes me think you're not maybe like squarely focusing on the immediate task. Like that's not maybe of paramount kind of focus. But it will be interesting stylistically too in kind of bringing that up, because I feel like Usman kind of, in a certain sense, strayed away from the offensive wrestling a little bit with time, or at the very least, his style of wrestling is different than, Covington's approach, where it's more of like a quantity-based kind of thing. Like it's like he has like a certain gas tank to drive forward with like the multiple takedowns, which sort of differentiates from Usman. So it'd be interesting to see how, Covington does end up responding to all of that and everything.
Yeah, man, it's a very interesting fight, man. If you're not intrigued by it, I don't know. I don't know, like, if you even enjoy fighting, right? Because Colby has a interesting style, and the thing is, like, what is he gonna bring? That's the question. We know what Leon's gonna bring. Like, we know his style, we know his strategy. We know he's not gonna be going shooting for takedowns unless he sees it. You know what I mean? We've seen him take down guys before, but I think Kobe goes in there and uses that cardio, uses that pressure, right? And wins this fight along the fence. Because Leon, he likes to just kind of like put his back against the fence a lot. You know what I mean? And he's comfortable. That Kobe's got to make him uncomfortable on the fence and clinch with him, burn clock time, and and dirty boxing, and then takedowns. If you can get him to the ground, keep him on the ground. Let's see what happens. Now, the co-main event, flyweight world championship. It's kind of crazy. Like, this is the first title fight in like 10 years that we haven't seen Brendan Moreno and Dave Figueiredo in a fight, right? It's like we've seen that like the past 10 years, right?
What is this marquee? What's going on?
Yeah, it's like who are these guys, right? Pantoja, Brandon Royval. I love Brandon Royval's style. He's a berserker, right? He goes in there and he's attacking. Pantoja, if he gets to the ground, dude, Pantoja's just too good. He's just too good, and he's durable, right? And on top of that, he got a gas tank, and I think that's what he's gonna do. He's gonna melt Royval. He's gonna melt him. Like, he's gonna go in there, utilize grappling. He's gonna strike with him, of course, because that's what he loves to do. But he's going to go in there. He's going to get the fight to the ground. I think he's just levels above it. I think he wins by submission, round 3, 4, 5. J-Spec, what do you got?
I'm going to agree with you again, man. And I think like before this, I thought in like a 3-rounder, Pantoja would beat Royval, to be honest. I think that championship stuff is true. The legend of the belt maybe makes you 10% better at least, or whatever. So that plus 10% on top of a dude I already thought was going to win that matchup on a 5-rounder. Yep. Count me in for Team Pantoja. Now, I'm not against Royval. I think he's talented and all that. Just this specific matchup, I'm going with the and still for me.
All right. There you go. Dylan, what do you got? You like the flyweights?
Yeah, and I think an interesting facet of this fight too is that it's a rematch, being that like Pantoja had actually finished Royval. I think it was like a couple of years ago. Like, I think it was August 2021. I think he had got him in like a rear naked choke. So Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, what Royval might have been able to shore up in the meantime if he's able to make it a bit more of a competitive fight, or if we, see Pantoja go 2-0 and ultimately just, get a pair of finishes over Royval. I ultimately think the latter is going to happen, but I mean, it's interesting fight for sure.
I think Pantoja is probably the deadliest ground specialist in the flyweight division right now. Like if he goes to the ground with you, like he's gonna most likely submit you. Like that's what's gonna happen. And he's got a crazy chin on him as well. But Royval, man, he has power, right? He has killer instinct. He's got to use that for himself early in the fight, right? And see what he can do because those scrambles is gonna happen. But how long is that gas tank gonna, be important for him? You know what I mean? But he trains in altitude. He's from Denver, so maybe. But some people say it doesn't matter when you go to like sea level. That doesn't really help you at all. So I've never tried it, so I have no idea. But yes, I'm taking Pantoja submission late in the fight. Colby Covington, I see him winning by decision. Yeah, 5 rounds. I see that happening. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Steven Wonderboy Thompson. I'm gonna have to go with Rakhmonov, man. I think Rakhmonov is just all around a better fighter, and Thompson, you know, we've seen what he can do, right? There's the path to victory for him, and I think Rakhmonov, he's gonna strike with him, as long as he doesn't get clipped. Rakhmonov wins that fight. I think he wins that fight by decision. Dylan, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to ask you that. It's kind of funny you say that. I was going to see if you, I guess, maybe saw this as being a continuation of that 100% finishing rate. So, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of leaning in that direction too. Like, I feel like that's invariably going to happen in his career. Like, he's going to face a guy who just has a certain level of, craftiness and, fight IQ whereby he can, take it the full distance. So I could see it being a pretty clear, like definitive win, but at the same time, like maybe one that does, go to the judges' scorecards. And I feel like that'll ultimately benefit Rakhmonov. I mean, get that other, experience underneath his belt. Just the idea of like, pacing himself over the entirety of the fight and whatnot.
Yeah, if he does go in there and finish the fight, I see that he goes in there and he's like on Thompson, dragging him, you know, making it everything heavy, and then finally get it to the ground and get the TKO finish. I can see that happening. J-Spec, what do you got on this one?
My man, I think Mr. Thompson's fighting 2 opponents. He's fighting Rakhmonov and he's fighting Father Time. And I know everybody speculates when the old clock shows up in your career, but let's look at it. Let's be honest. Like, you guys think I'm asking, can anybody remember? Because I can't. A time where you have a 40-year-old striker whose entire game element is based on speed and agility. When do we have a 40-year-old striker taking on a stud up and comer, not up and comer, but possible title challenger, like who's on a streak moving uphill? Like, come on, there's certain things in the fight game, this ecosystem based, if you will. And Shavkat is, he's that guy. He's the guy killing everybody on the street, young, looking like a viable person to fight for a title or the title one of these days upcoming. And Thompson is the name of yesteryear. Once again, 40 years old, striking orientated fighter. It's this matchup on paper historically goes to Rakhmonov all the time, every single time. And that's exactly why I'm picking him this time.
All right. Well, if you're making picks, you guys better go in the descriptions, download the AllStar app, and make picks on the app. Go into J-Specs League, win the prize. Next week's prize will be a signed glove from Ensign Inoue. If you win, all you got to do is pick, man. It's free. The next fight coming up is Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett, the fight that everybody's up in arms about. And I'm taking Paddy in this fight. I think Paddy goes in there and he berserks him. I think he goes in there early on and just overwhelms him. I think he's just going to go and empty the gas tank on Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson working with David Goggins. I don't know. Like Ferguson, conditioning has never been an issue for him. You know, maybe maybe mentally, maybe it helped him, but I don't know, man. Ferguson has always been like that unique character where you don't know exactly like what type of training he's doing. You don't know who the hell his coaches are, his training partners, and from what I've heard in the past, a lot of his training partners don't even like him anymore. So it's probably hard for him to find people to train with. I'm going with Patty, man. Patty has a good team behind him, and he's dedicated. And yeah, he's gonna be a father soon too, man. Like that changes people, uh, especially ahead of a fight. So I'm taking Patty by TKO early. Dylan, what do you got?
I mean, it does kind of read like that, though, doesn't it? Like Tony Ferguson, obviously on a downturn, has lost several fights consecutively, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, you were kind of like mentioning certain like booking styles of like the UFC matchmakers before, and how sometimes maybe people, get the soft touch a little bit. I mean, not to be disrespectful, but I mean, I feel like a lot of people, intimate that perhaps Paddy Pimblett is one of those guys that maybe is more of a soft gloves sort of case. I mean, I hate to even say it like that in the context of a guy like Tony Ferguson, but you just have to, I mean, it's such a momentum driven sport. I mean, at one point, Tony's a guy on like a 12 some odd fight win streak and on top of the world. And in like a couple of years, few years, you can all of a sudden be on a 6-fight losing skid. And yeah, I just feel like it's such a momentum driven sport in that sense. And I mean, Pimblett has the momentum and the youth factor. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know that I'm going to necessarily predict like a finish per se, but I mean, I do see Paddy Pimblett ultimately getting the W in this one.
All right. J-Spec?
I'm gonna sound like I'm repeating myself because I kind of am. Yes, this is old lion versus young lion. Don't make no mistakes. Don't make no mistakes on what the UFC is trying to do. They're trying to take a star from a previous decade that you know of, all right? And he's gonna get folded up, and they're gonna exchange that star power into the new one that they're trying to get in your face, and that's Paddy Pimblett. All right, it's basic magic, people. But anyways, no, this is fighting. It's a real deal. Don't these guys are men training? They're gonna fight. We're gonna find out for reals if that Mr. Goggins stuff is gonna be helpful. Boy, I gotta say this: if Tony not just wins but looks amazing, looks anything like the 20 teens version that everybody loves so much, David Goggins becomes like Steven Seagal 2.0 or something, right? Like, I bet everybody and their mama is going to want to train with David Goggins, but that's still left to be seen and found out if it's really reality. But let's be honest. What's on the table? Young guy on a streak. What does the promotion want to happen? What are we really being honest? What year is it? 2023. When fighters age, it doesn't go backwards. Okay, some fighters can keep it and they're competitive over time, but once that kind of like bell curve starts happening, there's never a chart where it goes back. Sorry, like the time performance curve just doesn't work like that. There you go.
I wonder if Tony Ferguson was forced into this fight. Like we've heard stories behind the scenes, right? Even a couple weeks ago, Jalen Turner was saying something like that, right? Something like he couldn't like refuse this fight.
We've heard it.
I wonder why they would say that, right? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah. Anyways, I wonder if Tony was forced into this fight because Tony makes pretty good money, right, per fight. And when you make good money and you're not drawing in what you make, they're gonna force you into fights, right? They're gonna give you matchups where it's like, okay, you're done with. So this is business, right? This is the fight business. You're kind of done with. We're gonna bring in this young guy to fight you. You could take this fight. And if you don't, we'll shelve you for a year. This is tactics, right? Happens. I'm not making stuff like this up. You know what I mean? It happens in promotions all the time.
All the time.
I wonder if he was forced into this fight. And if he was, then I hope he wins. You know what I mean? Because you hate fighters getting forced into situations where they don't want to fight. But the thing is, it's a big opportunity for Ferguson as well because Paddy Pimblett has a huge name and everybody's calling out Paddy Pimblett and Ferguson is the one who got the nod, right? So, but I don't think he's going to win. I think Ferguson, I think the wear and tear on his body is catching up to him. And also mentally he's just not. He's unstable, man. Have you guys watched the Ultimate Fighter the Ultimate Fighter that he was on? Have you guys seen those Ultimate Fighters?
Yeah.
Have you guys watched the 21st
Yeah.
Ultimate Fighter? Dude, he's had some mental breakdowns, man. Like even back then, he was having it on the show. When I saw that, I was like, "Whoa, this dude's it's kind of wild, man." And we've seen
Well, yeah, I mean
erratic
that.
behavior from him.
Yeah.
There's only
And
so many... Sorry, Dylan. Go ahead.
oh no, sorry. I was just going to say that there's actually a video that I've seen a few times. I believe the channel's called Beige Frequency. It outlines a lot of the stuff that Tony Ferguson has kind of gone through, and it does provide kind of a sobering picture, because oftentimes I feel like when people talk about Tony as being an eccentric guy, it's more of like a, oh yeah, blades and shades, like that kind of a vibe. But it's like there's some pretty intense details of some of the things he's been going through in his personal life kind of within there. So yeah, just kind of an interesting observation that I'd had with that, I guess.
Yeah, man, it's wild. And Jason, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, the Tony Ferguson as a whole, like, I know everybody loves him, but I think it also gets to a point where, like, maybe the fandom doesn't help, because he's still got like so many fans out there like CSOing him on everything, and like I get it, like fandom, like support people, but also sometimes like people still like, yeah, keep going, like you can do it, like sometimes not. I don't know. I'm not here to tell anybody when to retire, but yeah, definitely the damage. But most importantly, if you look at fighters as a whole, and this is a general observation based on what I see, no science included, you really only have, and I think this is a consensus by everybody who's even fought, so many wars. And Tony's well over the normal war limit. Like, so there you go. That's my final thing on Tony. Like, I'm
The
not
war
surprised.
limit.
The
What's
war
the
limit.
war? What's the over under on the wars like fighters can go through? Because there's a different. They're like there's the Diego Sanchez line, and then there's like the Robbie Lawler line. You know what I mean? There's different lines that you can go by, right? There's different like the war limit.
Yeah.
That's actually an interesting. You know,
Yeah, not
thing
like
right
good
there.
scrap, like
Oh,
wars. Like
yeah,
wars.
like
Yeah.
life off your the years off your life wars. You know, like Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler type
Rory
of
was
wars.
never the same.
Yeah.
I mean, another example of that, I mean, this is definitely more of like a sobering example, but a guy like Spencer Fisher, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen,
Oh yeah.
how he is in recent years. I mean, he was another guy like, just guaranteed like fight of the night machine. And yeah, definitely, bearing some of the residuals of that, unfortunately. I mean, it's sad to see, but I mean, it is what it is, unfortunately. I mean, especially when you kind of like indulge that sort of approach to the fight game. I mean, true legend as far as the exciting fights, but yeah, there's going to be the residual consequences from it, sadly.
Yeah, man. And there's guys that have been in way more wars than him, and we're just waiting for. Like, to be honest with you, like I'm afraid to see what the Korean Zombie looks like in 10 years. I'm really
Yeah,
afraid
man.
to see like him, because I think we could kind of see it now already, especially in his fighting. Like when you watched him fight in his last couple, he just did not fight with like that mental clarity. You know what I mean? Of course, he's known for the wars and everything, but he still has like he's very high level. You know what I mean? Highly skilled. There is strategy to what he's doing, but last couple fights, it wasn't the same, man. I'm afraid to see what's gonna happen to him, and you know, the war limit. That should be a name of a podcast. War limit. Anyways, last one we're gonna talk about before we get head out of here. Of course, the man of the hour, Ian Machado Gary. He'll be fighting Vicente Luque, his former training partner. You know what's interesting about this? I don't know if it's fully true because I got to interview Vicente, right? And Vicente, he's like one of the nicest guys out there. You know, what I mean, he's kind of like that Wonder Boy Thompson type of level of being a very nice person, respectful person. You know, him, Gilbert Burns is kind of the same, you know what I mean, to most people, you know, Volkanovski as well. So Vicente Luque, he's never going to say anything terrible about Gary. But I'm pretty sure there has been some things that happened at the gym that he did not like. I'm just saying this. You know what I mean? He didn't say this himself. I'm just saying this. But yeah, Ian Gary, man, with everything that's going on, and we're not going to talk about what's going on, but with everything that's going on, right? Is that going to affect him in the fight? To me, it's like that's the most intriguing aspect of that matchup to me is, can Ian Gary perform with every light on him, with everybody talking shit, with all the possibilities of if he loses, the level of like repercussion and the level of attacks that are going to happen, the level of scrutiny, you know what I mean? And the thing is, they're not just going to go after him, they're going to go after his family. They're going to go after his nutritionist. They're going to go after his wife. It's going to be crazy, right? Can he perform with all of that swirling around him? Because it's not even fight week yet, right? But once fight week starts and he's around other fighters, running into other fighters, you know, they're going to say, we're going to have an embedded where it's going to be mostly Ian Gary being followed around and people talking shit to him, right? Can he handle that?
I'm
I don't
dying over
know.
here. I'm
What are you
dying. I'm
going to
running out
say,
of breath.
J-Sec?
I'm fucking dying out of breath over here. Some would say, John, that Ian Gary performs better with an audience. Um, he's built for the pressure, and it doesn't matter who's watching. He can always get the finish. Sorry, I had to. I can't. Okay, he's the laughing stock of MMA right now. Everybody's shooting shots. Everybody's making jokes. He's the meme machine right now. The future. Wow, what a terrible nickname for having absolutely no foresight. Yo, all that being said, Ian Gary, I never liked this guy before this. So this is just to me like uh-huh. Um I don't like people who are facsimiles and shitty facsimiles at that. Be your own person. I don't care if you're boring. Just be you. And he is not. So with that being said, yeah, man, come on, Vicente. Come on, let's go, Luque. That's my pick. I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait for all of it. Like certain fighters, and not just humping at him, but certain fighters, they get famous and then they think it's a good idea to talk shit to the fans. Like, I get it. Talk shit to your peers, talk shit to the company, talk shit, whatever. But talking shit to the fans is a bad idea because 1 week, 2 weeks later, you could be fighting your brother on accident, getting arrested off topic. Or it could be found out that your wife wrote a hookup manual on hooking up with dudes just like you. What? Like, it's crazy, man. It's just crazy. Anyways, I hope this whole thing concludes with a massive knockout for Vicente Luque. There you go. That's my take.
Well, going back to what I was saying is like, can he handle all the pressure? Can he handle the lights? Can he handle everything, right? That's what intrigues me about him. Because if he can, this dude is the next biggest superstar. I'm telling you, because he has everybody hating him. And that's what you want first. You want them to hate you first. And then you turn them around, right? Then you flip the script on something. And the only way you can do that is by winning. And even if he loses, his next fight is going to be even bigger because he already has everybody's attention. He has it now. You know what I mean? They hate him. Okay? But you throw that hate out, he's a highly skilled fighter, man. He's undefeated for a reason. He does his thing. And Vicente Luque is not an easy fight. I'm going to pick Vicente Luque to win the fight, right? But I think it's going to be a pretty damn good fight, though. It's going to be very competitive. Dylan, throw out the WAG book. What do you say?
Honestly, maybe this is like the pro wrestling mindset in me coming out, but I feel like he just needs to lean into the sentiment a little more. I mean, because I'd seen a couple things where it's like he's like limiting the tweets coming at him and stuff like that. And to me, that's kind of like antithetical to, I mean, I guess what I would do. Like, I feel like I would just lean into the character that much more. I guess like, oh, you guys want to talk about me? And I'm not going to get into the specifics of it per se, but you talk about me in this certain vein. It's like, oh, if I'm that guy, why not like just, lean into it and like kind of, it's almost like when Henry Cejudo did that, like, King of Cringe thing, because people were calling him cringe as a pejorative. And he's just like, he uses that like playground kind of psychology like when you're trying to like, chirp a guy. And it's like, if you're showing that you don't have any reaction to it with time, people are like, oh, well, not getting a reaction. I'm not going to say it anymore. So, I mean, to me, it looks at it seems like one of those moments where it could really be like a legacy sort of thing, almost like in as far as like if he comes in and shows out just with the backdrop of all the drama and rhetoric heading in, but also speaking to the quality of opponent in Vicente Luque. And I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know that I am leaning towards a finish per se, but I don't know. There's some impression I'm getting that this could be like a decision win for Gary. Like, and as far as like, it could be one of those things where it's like, wow, he did have a lot going on as far as like the rhetoric heading in, the quality of opponent, etc. And yeah, kind of showed out. But I mean, again, Luque, definitely a proven guy, so wouldn't be surprised if, you know, he ended up getting the nod. But for some reason, I'm feeling a Gary points win on this one.
Yeah. Also, you know, from what I heard is Gary left Killcliff. This is, I think, I don't know if this is 100% true, but from what I heard this is like when Gary left Killcliff, that's when the fight was announced. Like the fight was announced after he left Killcliff. This is a rumor that I heard, right? But it could be false, you know what I mean? But the thing is, like, I asked Vicente, like, to his face, like, yo, was this fight forced? Like, did you guys have to take this fight? And then Vicente was like, I didn't have to take this fight. Maybe Gary did, but I didn't have to take this fight. Like, I took it, like, on my own, you know what I mean? So we will see, you know, you never know what's going to happen 100% behind the scenes. But clearly Vicente and Gary, they've trained together. They've sparred each other. So they know each other well. I don't know how well, but they know each other well. And I'm interested to see what can happen. But the thing is, Vicente can wrestle. I think he's going to wrestle in this fight. I think he's more focused on winning these fights rather than trying to be the most exciting fighter in the world. Because that's what he was doing before this. And he's changed a little bit. You know what I mean? So we'll see, man. But this card is stacked, dude. There's Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. You got Garbrandt versus Kelleher. Casey O'Neill is back against Lipsky. Menefield versus Dustin Jacoby is a banger. Oh, yeah. Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov is a crazy fight as well, right? So there's some good fights, man. A lot of good welterweight fights. Josh Emmett, you know what I mean? He's an old man for the division, but he's still fighting the young contenders, and we'll see what happens against Bryce Mitchell. Can Josh Emmett stay off the ground, and can Bryce Mitchell not get knocked out?
I'm glad he could stay on that card. Yeah, did Giga Chikadze fall out of that fight initially?
Yeah, it was like last week, man.
Yeah,
it's shitty. But yeah, it's a great card to end the year with, right? It's a great card to end the year with, and
agreed.
I'll be watching it. What time does it start? 6 p.m. Eastern. So that's like 3 p.m. Western start time for you guys in Vegas. Not bad. Not bad. 6 p.m. Eastern. I'll be up at 6 a.m. over here. It's 12 hours difference over here. So if it's 6 a.m. over there, 6 p.m. over here.
Oh, nice. That's easy. That's easy.
Yeah, it is. It's easy. So like right now, the show started at 8 p.m., which is 8 a.m. over here. Easy. It's not that bad. Yeah. So anyways, thank you everybody for joining us. Make sure you guys go in the descriptions and download the app just to follow along with sports, man. It's fully customizable. You can follow any sport you want. You'll get interviews, stats, scores, everything, news, all of that stuff from all the major websites and outlets. It's all gathered into one. If you like fighting, you can customize it for fighting. And then the cherry on top is, of course, the picks for UFC events. You could go in there and do all that every week and accumulate points, join the leagues, and win prizes. Anyways, thanks everybody for joining us live. And we'll be back next week for the final show, same time, 8 p.m. Sunday Eastern. And we'll be recapping UFC 296. Peace out, everybody.